Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, this podcast is for you. Recruiting is a battlefield where the rules keep changing and the chaos never stops. As the world shifted to remote work, real connection and unfiltered learning have never been more urgent. This isn't just a podcast, it's your survival guide. Welcome to the revolution, your digital bullpen. Hello, Mr. Nik Andrews. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Well, guys, I want to welcome you guys to another thrilling episode of the Recruitment Revolution, your digital bullpen. Again, Myrna forgot to say this last time, but
I know I forgot.
Don't forget to smash that like button if you like what you hear, and make sure you share it, guys. I think it's super important that we share to our socials. So share on LinkedIn, follow us on Spotify. We're really trying to create a network. YouTube. We're trying to create a network of folks so we can better support who we are in the industry. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but we have the beautifully talented and handsome Nik Andrews on the call today, Nik was somebody that I met my first day when I was hired at Robert Half. I was literally my first day on the job as the Metro Market Manager in San Francisco. And Nik, I was told, Ryan Kurtz told me, hey, sit down with this guy. I think we need to hire him. Nik was a former accountant, Big Four, I think you did an internship or a 6-month project with KPMG, was it? Or Yep, KPMG. I convinced him somehow that accounting was stupid. He should be a recruiter. And now he's been in recruitment for 7 years. He specialized in accounting and finance, contract in tech, SaaS, biotech, asset management, just a stud in what he does. And, I'm going to tell a funny story before, we get to know a little bit more about you, Nik, but I remember your first year, I think you tried to quit how many times? Like 15?
Nik's like, not that memory.
But it's how many times?
A lot. Because what happened is you kind of positioned recruitment as like a trial period for me because I could go back to accounting at any time.
Totally. And you were worried that you weren't be able to go back to accounting if you took too long or something. I think I remember, right? Yeah, you were worried about the gap in your resume. But you were so freaking good. And Nik's just a natural. He has the skill set. He's got the people skills. And we all know it. Like, I think I probably tried to quit I probably did quit once or twice. Like, I think everybody goes through it. But you stood in it, Nik, and you have thrived in what is not an easy job to get into, but once you get the swing of it and you realize that you have thick skin and you can do it, so super proud of you. And I'm super happy to have you on our second episode of, the Digital Bullpen, and we're excited. So Myrna, you want to dive in and get to know our guests?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and this is always the question, like, how did you get into recruiting? You kind of shared a little bit already, Nik, but kind of walk us through how that played out when you started at Robert Half.
Yeah, so I finished my internship with KPMG, and they post-date your offer to join a year later so that you can study for your CPA, essentially. And in that time, I found my way to Robert Half to be a contract accountant. And over the time that I was contracting as an accountant, I built relationships with the recruiters at Robert Half who eventually, I guess, identified that I could be a recruiter and ultimately started persuading me to join the recruiting profession.
I think I had to bribe him. I think there was bribes involved for sure.
Yeah, and there were bribes in the form of really fun happy hours with the Robert Half team. And I think ultimately what kind of swayed me into going into the recruiting field is the people. I found that I had this social, communicative, collaborative side of me that wasn't necessarily being leveraged or fulfilled in the accounting workplace.
Counting numbers isn't fun.
It can be.
It's the people.
You
It is the
know?
people. And yes, I get it.
So yeah, I mean that's what made recruitment really attractive. And I didn't have to totally give up my accounting skill set because I was still
Yes.
talking about it with people. But I just wasn't, doing the numbers work myself. So
Yeah.
it felt like a win-win.
And you're a natural, Nick. I mean, taking that accounting and being able to be a consultant to people and not just a processor is what I think also made you super successful. So I think that you really brought that background in. So let me ask you a question. If you weren't a recruiter, knowing what you know now, what do you think you would be doing?
I think I would have stayed within accounting,
Yeah,
actually. But now that I know about all the many career fields in accounting and finance, I know that
yeah,
there are some that cater to more sociable,
mhm,
um, people, skilled people, like
yeah,
maybe finance, like
yeah,
fundraising, or like, partners of CPA
yeah,
firms. They're out networking, trying to get new clients, doing business development. I think I ultimately would have found my way to a people-oriented
yeah.
function within accounting and finance. So,
It's interesting you say that because I know a lot of people go into accounting and they, you do your internship with the Big Four, and then and then they work you like crazy for the next 3, 4 years, and then you get in with the corporate,
right.
and it's almost like you don't get to know what else is out there. You don't get to feel it, and so I don't know. Maybe being a recruiter is a great opportunity to figure out what else is out there because you could always go back. You could still go back to accounting if you wanted to, but
Well, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I have done some accounting on the side
there
for
you
fun.
go.
Um,
Love it.
Just for fun,
like,
But just
crunching
for fun.
numbers.
yeah, like there was like this crypto company in LA like 2 years ago that wanted a part-time staff accountant, and I
I love
helped him
it.
out.
I love
So
it.
That's
There you go.
awesome.
See, you could take the accountant out of accounting. Wait, how does it go? I don't know. Take the boy out of accounting, but you can't take the accounting out of the boy. There it is.
Well, and what's interesting too about Nick is, and I think Paul, you would agree, there's a lot of people that went through the traditional accounting, route and maybe met up with a recruiter. They were ready to look for an opportunity. And that recruiter and the conversation, how that went, really kind of opened up the
Yeah,
doors to maybe it's not doing count like you said, but you're actually still part of that. And I think that's when you're talking to these professionals, my guess is that's why you can also connect so quickly with them is because you're kind of speaking their language and the
yeah,
numbers that they love.
totally. You built some trust. Yes.
totally. I mean, it helps that everyone says, and I say it too, you don't have to be an expert in the field for which you recruit,
Correct.
but knowing a little bit certainly goes a long way in building credibility and rapport more quickly. So.
Yeah,
You hit on a note there too,
absolutely.
Nick, which I love, and I hope people kind of take in because you don't have to know IT to be an IT recruiter. You
Right.
don't have to know. So, what would you say? So, tell me what you would say. Give advice to somebody like you're going into this role, you don't have it. Like, what do they have to do well in order to be good?
To be a recruiter.
Yeah, like what would you say makes you good? Like, I'm riffing here on that because I know that's what we had in follow up. But like we were talking about, if you went into IT and you wanted to do it, what would you do in order to get good at it?
If I wanted to go in IT, what would I do to get good at it?
Hmm.
Okay. Well, I would probably go back to
No, I would
Um,
say like you talk to a bunch of candidates, like candidates, right? Like what made you good at this is talking to candidates and interviewing them.
yeah, yeah. I think ultimately to be good at recruiting for any function, you have to try and gain a baseline understanding of what it is they do and be
Hmm.
curious enough to be able
There
to
it
dive
is.
deep. In to their experience because anyone can call out buzzwords and make
Yeah,
it sound like they have experience with anything. But I think what really reveals the depth of experience or quality in someone is when you're curious and ask them to expand. So just ask,
yeah,
tell me more, tell me why,
Yeah.
tell me
love
how.
it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Nick. It's I went into IT recruiting too, and I that was like the biggest fear is like, oh my God, I don't speak that language.
Hmm.
But most people, if you're just like, hey, this is I'm not at the level that you're at,
Hmm.
um, share with me, what does that mean? Tell me about
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
project. Like, how did you implement that? And
Yes.
then as you get more curious, I feel like that's really when they want to teach you. Like,
Yeah.
if they're good at what they do, they want to like teach you through the conversation and the
Yes.
questions that you ask. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's a great point. What's now kind of like thinking about, the time that you've been doing this in recruiting, what you've learned, what is maybe like a lie about recruiting that you wish people would stop believing?
Mm. I think the one that puts me the most is like this whole trend on LinkedIn of like the system, I gotta beat the system. Like
But
the
The
ATS,
ATS.
like no, I literally review every application we get. Like there's
yeah.
not a mean system that's preventing you from getting to me. Like I had just last week I had a role with over 200 resumes that
Well,
applied from the internet and I looked
Yeah.
at every single one of them.
yeah.
So
But yeah, we do that. Why? Why do we look at all of them?
because we know the system's not always right. And
Hmm.
it's
And
it's
we,
probably
yeah. And we also know we can maybe place them someplace else. Like we're not just transactional, right? We look at every person that's looking for a job, and if we could potentially help them, like absolutely, we're going to review it and reach out.
Mhm.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was working this really specific role for like a publicly traded company of ours, and of the 200 something resumes, a majority of which, we wouldn't necessarily be good for our firm to work with. But there were at least 10 that I saved as like, oh, they could be good for something else, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
reach out to them tomorrow. And I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, good point, Paul.
I love it. Okay, so on that note, what's the most ridiculous misconception people have about recruiters? Like, what do people like? They just don't know about us.
Mm, Probably that we just collect resumes and email resumes, and that's our job. I think people are not aware of how much back end conversation and persuasion and overcoming objections and all of the above selling is happening to
Yes.
get you your first interview as a
Hmm.
candidate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
I love it.
I mean, the recruiters really become that advocate for that candidate. Like, you've done the capturing of not only their skills, but the goals that they're wanting to achieve in the
Yeah.
next role. You get to know them as a human being. So when you do talk to your client, they're not a resume. There's
Yeah.
somebody that's like you've spoken to. You
Yes.
can put color to their resume.
Hmm.
And now you're really speaking about them and
Hmm.
advocating for them. And I
Yeah.
think that's a great highlight for you to mention because there is so much work that happens. And
Yeah.
yes, you can make great money here, but the work that goes behind it is
Yeah.
incredible.
It's like a 95% failure before those 5%, right?
Absolutely.
for sure,
Yeah. But so
for
on that note,
sure.
I love what Myrna you said. And Nick, I'd like your opinion about this, but I know that, the difference between a good recruiter and a great recruiter and some poor recruiters, really bad ones, is that you have people that process and match job to resumes. The good ones, we really look at what's behind there. Like what is motivating this person to want to get a job? We actually don't just match pay and job. We match like what are you looking for? What motivates you? What gets you up in the morning? How do you like to be managed, right? What culture do you like? And so I think that when you make those matches, that's what makes a great recruiter great is when you dive in beyond, under the veil. Like, what would you agree? Like, what would you say is something that you really dive into?
Mm, I think I like to start with like a framework of tangibles, right? Like the industry and the size of the company and like the
Yeah.
size of the team and how many reports they like to have and like
Mm-hmm.
all of those things you can identify on paper. And then this isn't really a sexy answer, but for the intangibles like culture and
Yeah.
personality fit and communication style, that's really something that takes practice.
Yeah.
But I think that is kind of when you pair
Yeah.
those two together, that's really what makes for an excellent match.
I
So,
love it. I love it.
So, I mean, obviously we've kind of talked and touched on a couple different aspects of like what you're doing on your desk. So, if you could kind of tell year one you some piece of advice that you
Don't
would have
quit.
loved?
Don't quit.
Yeah. Aside from not quitting and just like seeing it through, what you would have loved to hear? Like, what would that have been like for you to hear that piece of advice?
Yeah, if I could go back to year one me, I would sit him down and say, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Don't get in your head. You're not going to see immediate results right away. If you just find a high performer that you respect and can connect with and just copy them and do the same thing every day and stick to it, you'll eventually get to where you're going. I think that is all I would have said to myself. And I think it would have gone a long way.
It's brilliant. It's
Do you
true.
think you would
It's
have believed
that.
yourself, Nick?
I would believe me, yeah, but I think when you're brand new in a field and you want to impress everyone and yourself, you can get very anxious if things don't go well right away. And
Yeah.
recruitment is not a field where you can sometimes, but most people it takes a little practice to get
Yeah,
good.
Yeah.
So,
So
absolutely.
I'm going to combine kind of our next two topics, our thoughts is that I was going to tell like, what is something you're doing today in this market that you would tell other recruiters that's kind of helped you in your day to day? I mean, obviously the market's changed a little bit, right? The last year it's gotten a little bit more. You had said it's less of a candidate driven market. It is more of a client driven market, which is interesting, right? I think it's good to note that. But so it's something that you do in this market that you would give advice to other recruiters that really just helps you navigate that with your candidates.
hmm, I think I'm just trying to focus on building relationships with my candidates right now.
Yeah.
It's just stay the course, do what you can do, which is control your activity, and it'll come back to you eventually. But I think I'm just trying to see the silver lining that this is the time to connect with the really top talent, the high profile candidates that are always busy and never have time to connect with a recruiter because they never
Yeah.
need you. Well, now is the
Mhm.
time to really connect with those folks because they have the time. They're not finding jobs. They're
Yeah.
they're busy. And it's gonna pay off whenever the market turns around and they
Yes.
have a million recruiters calling them. So
1000%. Yeah.
You heard it from Nick first. Like
Yeah.
that is huge. I know Paul and I worked during like 2008, and I mean that was some of the
Yeah.
hardest times to be a recruiter and then to try to sell. I mean that
Hmm.
was just a tough time. And I think that's the same thing I learned during that, down market was just build the relationships. They'll remember you. They'll
Yes.
remember those conversations you had.
Yes.
They'll remember any kind of intel or anything that you,
Mhm.
you could share to help them kind of navigate that market.
Yeah.
And yes, I would agree. I mean, that was something huge that I
Yeah.
know I took away during that time and like continue to really build relationships. That I think that's when it clicked for me, like relationships really, really matter,
Yeah.
you know.
And you even went as far. I remember we were talking before, Nick. You were talking about really being a consultant and an educator. And I think you were
Yeah.
talking. What was it you were talking about? Like when pay, you were talking about pay a little bit and how you would
Mm.
approach somebody. Because I think that a lot of people, especially when the market changes, they don't know what they don't know. And
right.
and you had mentioned what were you saying about that again? You were saying that you like to like
I like to keep it real honest with people. I cut the corporate jargon and corporate
yes,
talk of like, well, like,
yes,
no. I'm just like, hey, like this is the client budget. Like this is what it takes to get the max for their budget. Here's like your competition and what qualities they have versus you and what they're charging. Like this is the rate that makes sense for you given the
mhm,
scenario. Like, take it or leave it. And
yeah,
usually 9 out of 10 people are really receptive to that. It's better to give the why and lay the cards on the table if you're going to tell someone you need to take less money.
yeah,
Because if you just say the
yes,
market's changed, you need to take less money, they're going to just call another recruiter.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I love that. You said something before that is impactful, and it's something that I think it's authenticity, right? Authenticity
Mm.
is disarming. It's something that I heard once, and it's just being authentic with somebody and real. Just drops their barriers, and I think you do a fantastic job of that.
I mean, it's humans talking to humans and having conversations, so it should be like that. But I think you had mentioned earlier, Nick, it's something that you kind of have to like practice. And when you surround yourself, uh, around those top performers and you pick up maybe the right word tracks, but you still have to be you for people to want to
Yeah.
work with you.
Yeah. All right, let's
Agreed.
move
Now,
on to A. Let's go on to AI.
there's
Yeah.
obviously there's a lot of talk around AI, and there's recruiting has been around forever, and we've all worked in probably all of the similar different types of databases and different workflows. But what are you seeing with AI being a big how's it going to transform the industry
Hmm.
if you allow AI to kind of play a role in recruiting?
I think it's going to be a double-edged sword. In terms of increasing productivity, I'm already using it to help me generate more creative and elaborate Boolean strings when I'm trying to do some interesting searches, things along those lines. But honestly, with regard to messaging or communications with candidates, I think AI is just more noise. Because,
Yeah.
people are savvy, people can quickly identify an authentic voice versus a computer-generated voice.
Hmm.
And we're all blown up with so many texts and calls and notifications and emails a day. So I think AI is actually going to push candidates in the job market more towards authentic relationships and away
Hmm.
from additional noise from technology.
I love
I
it.
love
And
that.
that was my
Personally.
next question was like, what can it replace? And I think you made a good point. It's that human interaction. And what's funny is you being in the industry 7 years, Kathy, who we just interviewed, 20 plus years, 25 plus years, she said the same thing. It's that authentic human interaction that people crave and
Mhm.
it will drive them. And I think you said that that's something that I don't think people should try to replace because it's
Mhm.
people want it. So I love it.
Well, and when
Yeah.
you think about when people move jobs, that is not like something like at whim that you decide to change jobs. So it's like, why would you want to leave that at the hands of like
Yeah.
a robot or, whatever we kind of imagine it being, right?
Yeah. Totally. I love it. So, all right, so let's move on. So, looking ahead, obviously AI being there, if you had a crystal ball, what would you say is going to happen to staffing in the future, maybe over the next like 5, 10 years? Like, what would you say is going to be the future of staffing?
I wish I had some clever insights, but I I think it's there's going to be more of an emphasis on building relationships with people, kind of like what we've already covered.
Yeah.
Just because as we saturate people's job search experience with more and more technology and digital barriers to actually just talking with a
Mm,
hiring manager or the people making decisions, it's going to make people want to have more
yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
So
I agree with you, and I think that like one of the things I see and just is AI and technology. The word AI is overused, by the way. I think I saw a coffee maker that said with AI in it, and I'm like, what?
You're
How is
like,
this
what?
AI?
dumb.
It's no. So, but to that point, I think that technology is going to help us with the busy work, right? The front end sourcing, the putting things together. It will help you with all the stuff that gets in the way of your day of forming those relationships and building and talking to people, and it will empower people to have more of those conversations, right, and maximize that. So I think that that's hopefully that's where I'm hoping it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it helping with a lot of administrative work, but
Yes.
Yeah.
anything that deals with gray area or nuance or judgment
Mm,
calls
yeah.
and or even, navigating conversations with candidates or
Mm,
hiring managers, I just do not see
no.
ChatGPT taking the
Yeah.
reins on that anytime soon.
Yeah.
Have you ever, let me ask you a question. In your background, have you ever had a candidate that didn't want to take a job, but you knew just in your heart of hearts this was the right job for them, and you convinced them and it turned out well for them? I mean, I'm sure it's happened in your past.
Yeah, literally last week.
Oh, really? Tell me about, because that's, I mean, again, that's the heart of hearts. Like, so tell me about that.
So we're working with this biotech client here in the Bay Area that they need a consultant. It's not a full-time direct hire role. They need
Mhm.
a consultant to help with a very specific need. I have this person I'm working with, a consultant who's on paper at the VP of finance level. Okay. This role is not titled VP of Finance, nor is it dealing with all of the groups of people that she usually would work with or the level of responsibility. It's for a niched need. Sent her the role, tried to get her all hyped up about it, and she was like, "No, this will be a step back for my career. It's not the right leveling. The scope is
Mhm.
not broad enough. I'm capable of more." I knew that she was way out of line. I was like, "Girl." Let's get on the phone. And because we have a good relationship, she did get on the phone with me, and I was able to kind of shift her perspective a little bit. Like, hey,
Mm,
this is not a permanent role. This is a consulting need. They're bringing you in to help with a very specific area. So I would encourage you to look at it as you're helping them out as a consultant. This is not like a permanent role.
yeah,
And she was able to see the light. And, she ended up being very interested and moved forward. But I think a lot of
yeah,
times people just make snap judgments
yes,
for God knows what. And sometimes you have to first understand why they made that judgment
Mhm.
and overcome that judgment if it's appropriate. You never
yeah,
want to strong arm someone, but
yeah. Ah, Nick, so good. I love it. So
oh.
good. All right, let's get to know Nick, not in the recruiting. And Mirna, you want to start us off for our yeah. We're gonna
Okay, this is
yeah.
our fast four. So, the people want to know, Nick, what's
They
your
want to know.
guilty pleasure to decompress after a day in the world of staffing?
This is gonna sound so boring, but it's literally the gym.
Love.
It's literally the gym. And let me
Yeah,
tell you why. It's poetic, the reason why I choose the gym. Because staffing is it's not in your control 100%.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unknown variables. We're dealing with people, not products, so they can make their own choices and change their minds at any time. And there's just a lot that's out of your control. So whenever you have that anxiety, whether you like to admit it or not, build up throughout the course of your day, your week, it's really important to take time to get out of your head and into your body and
yeah,
release that tension
yeah,
and control something that you can 100% control every
yeah,
time, no matter what, which is your workout at the
yeah.
gym. So to me, it's a way to kind of balance it all out.
Nick, you remember I
Love
worked
that.
out every day at lunch when we were at Robert Hat? It's because I needed to get away because sometimes I was like, F this, I need a break.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you come back and you're like, I can do this. I'm back. So I
I'll
appreciate
never
that.
forget it. I learned from you in that way because sometimes when I have a bad day, I'll say, we're going to the gym at lunch
I love it. Yeah, you go.
today.
All right. So let's talk TV or movies. But what's the last show you binged watched?
I just watched on Netflix that show with Nicole Kidman, The Perfect Couple.
Oh my God, I loved
So
it. It was
Ah,
so
good.
good.
it was so good.
It
I
was
love
hard to
it.
figure out
Okay,
who it was. I
let's not
loved
spoil
it.
it. Let's not spoil it. But did you know who it
We
was gonna be, or were you
won't.
shocked? You were shocked.
I was shocked, but I think I'm just slow because I like my mom started watching it and she messaged me after the first episode, so and so is who did it. And I'm like, how did you figure that out?
Way.
She knew.
You know, yeah.
I love it.
Now, what's random stuff, I guess, currently living on your nightstand?
PG-13.
Mhm.
All said
Let's see.
PG-13.
I've got my mouth guard because I grind my teeth when I sleep.
Hey, all right.
So
Let's
good
see.
for you.
Any
So good.
books you're reading?
Um, I have a book here on my kitchen table, but not on my nightstand. That's
What
pretty
are you
bad.
reading? What are you reading?
It's this book from my spirit coach.
Okay.
This it's called Attuned. I need to finish it, but it's about this notion that we're all a spiritually interconnected forest.
I love
I
it.
love,
It's
I'm gonna
it's
pull
woo
that up.
woo woo.
I love
Yeah.
no,
Love
I
it.
love
Right
woo
up my
woo.
alley.
Myrna's all about woo woo, trust me.
Love it.
Yeah.
We'll have to
All
chat
right.
more about that.
All right. So last question. What's one thing that's filling your heart with gratitude right now?
People.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I think it's been a weird 4 years. COVID is long gone. It came and went, it changed the world forever. But, I think even it, in my personal life, at work, we've all just had to really learn to accept that some life's not really in our control 100%. And at the end of the day, it's the people you surround yourself with that get you through it. And
Yeah.
that's at my job and outside of my job. And I've really learned to love and lean on the people in my life. So
I love
that's
it.
what I'm grateful
I mean, we
for.
didn't even tell them who you're working for, who you work for. What's the company name?
Yeah, I work for a company called Vaco.
I should have started with that.
Yeah.
And who's your
Uh,
boss?
my boss, her name
Oh,
is Aaliyah.
nice. And you work for the
Um,
wonderful Linnell Flint as well, who we love.
I
Uh,
do. Yeah, she's still kicking it up in Seattle.
I love it.
Yeah, she's in and out of that SF office all the time, moving and shaking.
Tell her we
All
said
right.
hi and that we're going to be
Yes.
stalking her to be on our podcast.
Yes.
I will. I will, of
She
course.
is, yes. Well, Nick, I got to tell you, thank you so much for being on our wonderful little
Yes, thank you.
podcast today. And again, remember everybody, if you love Nick, how could you not? And you love what he said, like the episode, share it so other people can hear his impactful, brilliant advice that he learned all
Yes.
from me. I'm just kidding, and from others. But no, Nick, you are amazing. Thank you so much. And again, so much success. We wish it to continue in your life. And we'll see you hopefully soon.
Yes, much love to you guys. Thanks for having me, and this has
Thanks,
been so
Nick.
much fun.
Yes, thanks for coming along. We appreciate it so much.